Hito is a worthless degenerate who lives alone because his parents abandoned him to get milk. However, everything changes when he hires an assassin girl to be his maid. Now she'll do anything to protect him. It all begins one morning when Hito is asleep in his apartment, which is just as trashy and messed up as an Annie Under subscriber's brain. But the doorbell suddenly starts ringing, so he heads downstairs to open the door. As he looks through the screen, he sees a curvy baddie named Yuki asking to be his maid, which shocks him completely. After letting her in, the idiot finally starts packing up all the trash bags while explaining to her that the place is a mess because his parents aren't around. While serving her a drink, Hito wonders if she really intends to work for him or to steal life savings, so he asks her where she worked in the past. She explains that she's the John Wick of maids, as she assassinated everyone who offended her previous master, and it's her master who referred her to his place. Hearing this, Hito's mind starts collapsing, and he swallows copium by concluding that she's joking, but she confirms that she isn't. So he starts panicking and decides to get her out of his house without offending her. He then takes her outside to see her assassination skills, but she suddenly becomes Deadpool, as she skillfully throws a bunch of knives, which land on a tree in a perfectly vertical order, leaving Hito stunned. While trembling like your mom's freaky massager, Hito tells her that he can't hire her because he doesn't need an assassin and doesn't know her master, so she apologizes for the trouble and leaves. On the way, Yuki feels sad that she got her hopes up for a pathetic virgin, and she wonders where she'll go next, but Hito suddenly calls out to her and tells her that she forgot her jewelry. However, as he runs towards her, Truck-kun suddenly appears in the adjacent street and tries to yoink him into the Attack on Titan universe, but Yuki quickly jumps in and saves him. As she checks on him, Hito thanks her with his face glowing red, but Yuki, who is also blushing, pulls away and tells him that her heart won't stop pounding because it's the first time she saves someone. After he hands her the jewelry, she turns to leave, but Hito calls her back and tells her he needs help with cleaning his apartment. When they return home, Agent 67 starts explaining all her bowel-removing techniques to him because it's all she knows, but he explains that he only wants her as a maid to keep his house clean. However, she ends up breaking the equipment and messing up the place even more, and when she tries to clean it up, she slips, and a bucket lands on her head. Seeing this, Hito realizes that she's clumsy, and she remorsefully apologizes for being a failure, thinking he's about to fire her. But instead, he hands her a towel to clean herself up and offers to join her in cleaning up the apartment. Minutes later, the house is sparkling brighter than Andrew Tate's head, so Hito thanks Yuki for her hard work and tells her to take a bath before dinner. While she's in the bath, the idiot starts freaking out, as he imagines that she'll come out with only a towel and recreate a freaky romance scene with him.
Yeah, boy.
But she comes out with her full maid outfit, which makes him curse the plot gods for abandoning him. Shortly afterwards, they start cooking together, and Yuki explains that she isn't moved by food because she only considers it as a means to sustain herself, but Hito promises her that the KFC chicken he bought will rock her world, so she agrees to try it. As Yuki eats the food, she still can't tell how it tastes, but she realizes that, unlike her previous abusive household, the food and atmosphere at Hito's place feel warm, so she tells him it's delicious. However, Hito asks her to try out a sauce, and once she does, her taste buds go into a frenzy for the first time, and she falls in love with Hito's special sauce.
What do you mean by that?
Later that night, Hito heads downstairs to get some water, but he hears some noise from the kitchen, which terrifies him as he imagines that Yuki has gone back to default settings. However, he sees her stealing the special sauce, so he prepares another meal for her to enjoy with it. After eating, Yuki asks Hito if he had a nightmare because she heard him screaming from his room, and this bothered her because she didn't know how to comfort him. Hito explains that he usually has a recurring nightmare about his mom abandoning him, and his mom used to comfort him by letting him rest on her lap. Hearing this, Yuki offers Hito her thick thighs to use as pillows, but he declines.
It should have been me, not him!
So she starts feeling depressed as she concludes that she's nothing but a murderer, just like people used to tell her. Seeing this, Hito suddenly rests on her lap, and he tells her it's warm, so she tells him she feels the same way and asks him to sleep there for the rest of the night. The next morning, Yuki is cleaning up the apartment using thunder-breathing moves, and as Hito walks out of his room, he notices that all the trash is bagged up neatly. So she explains that she sliced the trash into smaller pieces to boost efficiency in bagging them up. Hito is impressed because it takes up less space than it usually does, so he thanks Yuki, causing her to blush. Soon after, Hito finds an oversized dog in an adoption box, which someone left by his gate, and Yuki reads a note attached to it, where the owner explains that he left the dog at a rich-looking house because the dog had more cake than he could handle.
Huh?
This annoys Hito, but he notices that the dog is in a bad mood, so he starts eating it, and he tells Yuki that he wants to adopt it because its small body could die if they leave it out in the winter season. Hearing this, Yuki remembers her past and tells him that all creatures, even small ones, must become strong through survival of the fittest, and she warns Hito that the responsibility may come back to bite him if he takes in the dog. However, Hito reminds her that she saved him the other day out of pity, and explains that their human bodies react before they can think when they see someone in trouble. He then points out that he knows what it feels like to be abandoned, and suggests heading back inside so that the heat doesn't fry the dog's tiny brain. Inside, Hito is playing with the dog, and he asks Yuki to have a try, but she moonwalks away, which makes him realize that she's afraid of dogs. When he asks why she's afraid of dogs, she narrates how one of her mentors left her in a mountain filled with wild dogs, and Hito understands her trauma, so he points out that it'll be troublesome to take care of the dog. However, she starts to feel bad, so Hito explains that he wasn't blaming her but saying that she has to bear with him because he doesn't want the dog to be left alone again. Hearing this, Yuki finally agrees to hold the dog, but while she does, Hito tells her not to force herself because she's vibrating like a cat on steroids. He asks her what she's afraid of since the dog is well behaved, so she mentions that it has claws, fangs, and a scary gaze. But Hito tells her that all he sees when he looks at the dog is mochi. Suddenly, the dog bites her finger, and she gets so scared that she tries to powerbomb him. But Hito explains that it's just play biting and saves the dog from her. As the dog bites his arm, he notices that its teeth are hurting, so he starts inspecting its mouth, and Yuki tries to warn him that it's dangerous, but he assures her that it's fine and suggests going outside. They soon arrive at the animal hospital, and Yuki doesn't understand what they're doing there, so Hito explains that they need to check the dog just to be sure that it's fine. After getting the dog checked, they head to a supermarket next door, and Yuki picks out a collar for the dog. On the way home, Hito thanks her for her help and tells him he's a kind person, but claims that she feels a certain distance between them every time he shows her kindness, because she was treated like a failure where she was before. Before now, she was only sent on missions like Ethan Hunt, but the things that Hito is asking her are new to her, so she doesn't understand how she can be someone Hito needs. In the past, she wanted somewhere to belong, because the people in power used her like a pawn because of her skills, and all she needed to do was destroy targets. However, things are different at Hito's place, so she feels that all her skills and experiences amount to nothing, and she asks him if she has the right to live in such a bright world. As he tries to reply to her, the dog suddenly starts running around, so he chases after it and asks her if she wants to become a normal girl by quitting her old job. While watching the sunset with Hito, she wonders if she'd be able to find out more about Hito and his warm world after she quits being an assassin. Hito admits that he was really scared of her when she first arrived at his place, but after spending time with her, he's realized that she's actually a good girl. This makes her have flashbacks of a time when she was pampered, so she asks him what she must do to be a good girl. He explains that she doesn't have to worry about making mistakes, because it's normal to do so while trying something for the first time. The next morning, Yuki is cutting up some cabbage, but the dog starts cuddling her leg, and this scares her so much that she threatens to cut off its family jewels with her blade. However, she notices that the dog is hungry, so she feeds it some Scooby snacks, but as she tries to pet it, Hito suddenly arrives, causing her to pull her hand away. He thanks her for feeding the dog and starts playing with the dog's stomach. He then decides to name the dog Chitaro, and Yuki says it's a great name, so he thanks her for cutting up the cabbage and claims that she's finally getting the hang of being a maid. Chitaro starts pestering Hito to play with him, but Hito says he'll have to wait until after dinner, so Yuki offers to play with him and explains that she wants to become normal by overcoming her fear of dogs and believing in his words that Chitaro is harmless. Hito is shocked by her words, but he tells her that he believes in her as well, and this gives her the confidence to finally play around with the dog. While playing with him, she remembers when Hito told her that she's a good girl, and she finally understands his words, so she tells him that she feels ridiculous for being scared of the harmless dog. Later, Yuki enjoys a plate of food with the special sauce, and Hito offers to give her another serving, but she hesitates, so he tells her to consider it as a reward for getting along with Chitaro. While making the food, Hito asks her when her birthday is, but she says she doesn't know the exact date, even though it's in winter. He tells her he loves snow, and serves her the second serving of food, so she smiles and thanks him for everything he's done for her so far. The next morning, Yuki is in the yard playing with Chitaro, but Hito suddenly arrives and hands her an ear-piercing device while explaining that he's been aiming to get his ears pierced like Lil Wayne, but doesn't have the marbles to do it himself. Yuki is still confused, so Hito explains that he wants someone with experience to handle it, and she fits the bill because she has piercings herself. Hearing this, she finally agrees to pierce his ears, and after sitting down, he cheerfully asks her to do it with one swift poke. However, as she tries to do it, her hands start vibrating, and she pulls away, so Hito asks what's wrong. She apologizes and explains that she couldn't do something as horrible as poking him, even though she doesn't mind getting poked from behind by his eggplant. This shocks Hito because she literally puts holes in people for a living, but as he tries to convince her, the doorbell suddenly rings. When Yuki opens the door, she sees a loli named Riko, who is excited to see the puppy, and she asks Riko if she's Hito's sister, but Rito is frozen in shock, as she can't believe her pathetic brother bagged an elite baddie. Shortly after, Riko is amazed by the sparkling apartment and fluffy dog, but she starts chewing Hito out for not telling her that a maid more beautiful than Anne Hathaway is living at their house. He explains that he didn't want their mom to get worried, and he's already informed their dad, who gave him the go-ahead to hire a housekeeper. However, Riko pulls his cheeks while scolding him for not telling her, so Yuki asks if she's living separately from him. Riko admits that she is, but her shrimp-sized brain gets overwhelmed by Yuki's beauty, so she looks away and starts glazing her. Hito explains that he didn't want to introduce her to Yuki because she's obsessed with beautiful things, but Riko is annoyed and starts bullying him again. Afterwards, the girls introduce themselves to each other, and when Yuki brings up her past as an assassin, Riko takes her glazing to the next level by asking for her autograph. Yuki humbly complies, but when she signs the autograph, Riko and Hito freak out because her handwriting is just as messy as a quack doctor's. Seeing this, Yuki explains that she never had time to learn calligraphy because her former job as a hitman required her to travel around the world, and apologizes for showing them something unsightly, but Riko cheers her up by saying it looks as cute as an idol's autograph. Riko then offers to write about Yuki for her summer assignment and asks her to show her some of her most brutal moves, so Yuki calls her out to the yard. On arriving there, Yuki places an apple on Riko's head and backflips while throwing a dagger, which pierces the apple into the tree. Riko is so amazed that she pesters her with questions about her knives, and Yuki explains that she used to carry 16 before, but ever since Hito scolded her, she only carries 5. However, when she tries to show her the knives hidden in her clothes, Hito suddenly stops them, because his virgin brain wouldn't be able to handle seeing Yuki's bare plots. Shortly after, Riko admires the bell on Yuki's hair, and she asks if it would interfere with her work. But Yuki explains that her targets would already be dead before they hear the bell, which impresses her even more. As Riko tries to mimic Yuki, her stomach growls loudly like a brain-dead ogre, and Hito starts mocking her for it, so she explains that she hasn't eaten all morning. Hearing this, Hito decides to make lunch, and when he asks what Riko wants, she asks Yuki to make her special dish, and Yuki serves her some sliced cabbage since she's no different from a rabbit in terms of IQ. However, this doesn't satisfy Riko, so they all head to the nearest Burger King joint for a meal, and Riko sees a poster advertising a summer festival that evening, so she cheerfully suggests that they attend. Hito then informs Yuki that the special sauce she loves so much will be displayed at the festival, and this has her drooling, so he decides that all 3 of them will go to the festival. That evening, they arrive at the festival spot, and Riko tries to win a prize at a shooting spot, but fails miserably. As Yuki holds the gun, Riko stares at her in anticipation, thinking she's about to shoot a hole through the tent, but she ends up flopping as well and explains that shooting isn't her forte. However, during a fishing game, Yuki regains all her aura by moving like Flash, while catching a ton of fish, and Riko asks her for tips, so she teaches her a secret technique. Afterwards, Yuki tries some biscuits drenched in the special sauce, and it tastes so good that her brain goes into aeroplane mode, and she starts stuffing her face with the other biscuits. The merchant is impressed that Yuki is such a foodie, so he gives her an even larger pack of biscuits and sauce, and Riko runs away to get her a drink. Hito and Yuki sit by a rock while waiting for her, and Hito asks Yuki if it's her first festival, so she explains that she's only ever attended festivals to deliver fatal backshots to her targets. Suddenly, the fireworks start going off, and as they admire it, Riko returns and hands her a drink before joining them to enjoy the view. However, Hito is so stunned by Yuki's charming looks that he ends up spilling his load all over himself, causing Riko to laugh at him. On their way back home, they see a thug riding away after stealing a woman's bag, and he moves at high speed towards Riko. But Yuki swoops in and saves her, which makes her glaze the overpowered maid even more. While picking up their snacks, Hito gives a speech about how human trash like the thief deserves to be punished. So Yuki decides to take action and swiftly chases after him. Hito and Reko chase after her as well, and Hito worries that they could get into trouble if Yuki causes an incident in front of everyone, but she stops the criminal in an empty alley by throwing some daggers at his bike. As she moves in to make the finishing blow, Hito begs her not to unalive him, so she slightly knocks him on the head and tells him that she's still hungry, so he promises to buy her more snacks on the way home. While walking home together, Reko asks Yuki if she's ever been to school, but Yuki has no idea what school means, so she explains that it's a super fun place where people hang out with friends. Suddenly, she gets a text from her mom, promising to make beef stew for her, so she cheerfully runs ahead. As they watch her, Yuki tells Hito that she wants to try going to school, and he agrees that school would be a good experience for her. Days later, a new semester begins, and Hito is chilling with his friends when the teacher suddenly arrives and introduces Yuki as a transfer student. She introduces herself with Hito's last name, and this shocks him so much that he spills his white juice all over his own face. But the teacher tells everyone that she's his cousin from overseas and sends her to sit in the chair directly in front of him. While taking her seat, she tells Hito that she's looking forward to having classes with him, but the entire class loses their minds because they heard her call him master. After school, Riko meets up with them and cheerfully asks them how school was, but Hito is so exhausted that he looks like Medusa has drained his man juice, and he points out that it was part of Riko's plan, so she celebrates that her surprise went well. While walking back home, Riko praises Yuki for learning everything about school within just 3 days, but Yuki explains that she only learned so fast because Riko was glazing her so much. However, Hito doesn't care about all that, and he asks them how they set up Yuki's transfer to his school as his cousin without telling him, so Yuki explains that she got in using some of her underground connections, and it was Riko who cooked up the backstory because she felt Yuki would be accepted more easily if she pretended to be his relative. She then points out that the reason she kept it secret is that Riko told her it would be funnier that way, and Riko starts celebrating, so he bonks her on the head. Seeing this, Yuki is worried that she made Hito upset, but he explains that he's only a little surprised and tells her he's looking forward to enjoying a normal school life with her. The next day in school, the lunch bell rings, and all the NPCs in class rush out to get a special snack at their canteen called Katsuda bread, and this interests Yuki so much that she tells Hito that she wants the Katsuda bread for lunch as well. However, Hito explains that it's a rare item that can only be gotten by rushing to the canteen since it closes early. He then explains that the Katsuda bread is topped with a lot of Katsuda sauce, but mentions that they'd never make it in time to get it since their class is far away from it. However, Yuki goes into full assassin mode and assures him that she'll get the Katsuda bread before jumping out the window to the school roof. Hito chases her there and explains that they'd have problems if she stands out too much, but she ignores him and runs ahead. While following her, Hito realizes that he can't stop her because she has the eyes of an OnlyFans model who's seen a 14-inch eggplant for the first time, and he knows that nothing on earth can stop her from getting the Katsuda sauce she craves. Just then, the first wave of Katsuda bread fans charges towards the canteen, and Hito realizes that there will be trouble if his Maid mommy jumps in front of them, so he starts panicking. However, Yuki jumps to another roof instead, and spider monkeys her way directly into the restaurant, where she orders a Katsuda bread and a Katsuda sandwich. After buying the snacks, she apologizes to Hito while explaining that the Katsuda deli bread is limited to 1 per person, so he picks up a croquettes bread and tells her he's fine with it. As she eats the bread, Hito admires her charming face, and he feels happy that he didn't rain on her parade, but she suddenly splits the bread in half and feeds it to him, causing his skull to have a meltdown. Days later, Riko is playing with Chitaro, feeling excited over the fact that she's sleeping over that night, but Hito complains that she's already visited them enough all summer, so she explains that it's a big event for her because she wants to spend the night talking about K-drama brainrot with Yuki. While yapping about her silly fantasies, Riko tells Hito that Yuki is in love with him, but he says it's impossible because she isn't into that kind of thing, so she reminds him that she knows more about the hearts of girls than he does. To prove his point, he brings up how Yuki fed him Katsuda bread several days ago, claiming she did it in a non-romantic way, but Riko starts geeking out about the fact that Yuki has basically given him a green light to eat her cupcakes. As the delusional airhead yaps about their wedding, Yuki suddenly arrives and asks who's getting married, so Riko tells her that it would be nice for her to become her big sister for real. She then asks Yuki if she likes Hito, and she replies that she cherished him dearly, and this makes his soul leave his body. Shortly afterwards, the three of them are seated outside, and Riko starts glazing Yuki for looking pretty without makeup, and she claims that she'll make herself cute with tons of makeup when she looks cute. But Yuki says she already looks adorable. This makes Riko happy because the only people who've ever told her that are her parents, and she asks Yuki for tips on how to become prettier. So Yuki recommends that she eat more tonkatsu sauce. As Riko eats a biscuit with tonkatsu sauce, Hito watches them, and he realizes that it's best to let the girls hang out together because Riko is helping Yuki adapt to a normal life. However, Riko starts teasing him with wedding jokes again, but Yuki isn't familiar with the concept of weddings, so Riko explains to her that Hito would be able to tie the knot with her when she turns 18, which means that she'd officially have his last name. Rito tells her to stop the nonsense, but Riko reminds him that getting married to Yuki gives him lifetime access to her unshaved honeypot, so he finally folds, and she makes fun of him even further. During class the next day, Hito is falling asleep because of all the stress Riko put him through the previous night, and the teacher throws a chalk to wake him up, but Yuki slices it in half, only for the two pieces to stab his eyes. Hito heads to the nurse's office to get his eyes checked, and there he meets a mammy with huge milk tanks named Moriyama, who is filling in for the nurse. When she asks how he and Yuki are related, Bro lies that she's his cousin, but this makes her laugh at him because he looks nothing like her. After checking his eyes, Moriyama suddenly goes into freak mode and climbs on top of him while promising to recreate his favorite corn hub scenes with him. But Yuki suddenly crashes into the room to check on him, so he runs behind her. While teasing them, Moriyama hands Hito some eye drops, but Yuki suddenly pulls him back and angrily asks her to never approach him again, making Hito realize that she's jealous. She then drags Hito to the hallway, where she apologizes for her behavior, before revealing that Moriyama is actually an assassin just like her. Meanwhile, at the nurse's office, Moriyama stares at a picture of Hito hanging out with the girls and declares that she'll destroy Yuki's pretend family. Apparently, Moriyama's real name is Grace, and her dream is to spend the rest of her life on Santorini Island, getting cracked by hundreds of men who are built like Dwayne Johnson. For this purpose, she gathered intel and unalived so many people, and now, she feels that her dream is finally within her grasp because the prize for taking Yuki's head is enough to buy Drake's mansion. That night, Hito struggles to sleep because Yuki is watching him like an owl at point-blank range, but when he complains to her, she explains that she has to do it because she has no idea when Grace will strike. She then asks to be his bodyguard until she can get more information on Grace, but Hito says he isn't comfortable with the current arrangement, so she takes things further by lying in bed beside him, which makes him even more flustered. He tells her that he's worried about her, but she assures him that she'd be able to dismantle her opponent with one hand, even though she's asleep. She then points out that Grace was able to find her thanks to her actions in the past, and holds Hito's hand while promising him that she'd protect him no matter what, because he showed her how warm the world can be. However, Hito says he still worries for her, and he doesn't want to lose her, even though he knows he can't do anything. As he tries to open the window, Yuki stops him and opens it for him while explaining that there could be a sniper around. While staring outside the window, Yuki smells some katsuda sauce nearby, and this distracts her long enough for Grace to sneak in and grab Hito. Grace calls her a fraud for falling for a cheap trick, and claims that a group known as the White Wolf of the Dragon's Nine would be ashamed of her. Yuki tries to attack, but Grace stops her by reminding her that she can crush Hito's eyeball before she gets close, so Yuki speaks Chinese while threatening to annihilate her in brutal ways if she hurts Hito. Grace reveals that she actually intends to unalive Yuki, but admits that she needs to use underhanded tactics because she knows she isn't nearly powerful enough to do it on her own. She then tells him to come to school by 2 in the morning and promises that she'll guarantee his safety until then. After Grace leaves, Yuki remembers her master telling her that she'll never be able to escape her blood-stained past, and she agrees with him because she knows Hito wouldn't be facing such danger if he hadn't met her. She concludes that her normal life was a fleeting dream and decides that she'll destroy Grace, and after ensuring Hito's safety, she'll leave the country to fix everything. However, she remembers Hito telling her that he doesn't want to lose her, and this makes her realize that what she really wants is a happy life with him. Meanwhile, Grace ties up Hito on a fence in the schoolyard, and she asks if he hates Yuki for being the cause of his captivity, but he tells her that he believes in Yuki because she promised to protect him. Grace is annoyed by the fact that Incel is showing courage, so she walks away but tells him that she doesn't care if he lives or dies because her real goal is to unalive Yuki. Hito asks her why she's referring to Yuki by the Chinese name, Shu Wei, so she explains to him that Yuki is a cold-hearted, merciless murderer who is the fourth of the Dragon's 9, nicknamed the White Wolf. However, Bro doesn't understand what the Dragon's 9 is, so she explains that it's the ultimate group of assassins that was formed by gathering talent from various countries, and it's believed that every major event in human history had a member of the Dragon's 9 behind it. Because of the overwhelming power they possess, there are many groups that oppose them. Grace then points out that if she murders Yuki, one of the Dragon's 9, her reputation will skyrocket, and she'll get enough money to make her dreams come true. However, Hito claims that the Yuki he knows is a schoolgirl who acts like a Disney princess, but Grace argues that she's the real White Wolf because she's observed her for 3 weeks. Grace feels that there's something off about Hito because no normal human being would be able to calmly hold a conversation while being tied up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and she feels that there's something in him that melted Yuki's heart. However, she feels that her victory is assured because Yuki would be weaker now that she has something to protect. When the clock strikes 2, Yuki arrives at school and does a Naruto run while charging towards Grace, and Grace fires some bullets at her, but she reflects the bullets with her blades. However, Grace pulls her trump card by firing the landmines she fixed in the ground, causing an explosion directly under Yuki, but Yuki powers through the blast and clashes weapons with her. Hito says he's relieved that Yuki is okay, and she promises to save him, but Grace starts gaslighting her by pointing out that Hito wouldn't like her if he found out all the atrocities she's committed. However, Yuki tells her to quit her yapping and end things quickly, because staying up later than that time would make Hito late for school, and Grace gets ticked off by this, but Yuki rage baits her even more by saying that Katsuda sauce is more valuable than her wardrobe. Grace then activates a controller, which activates a bunch of laser sniper rifles aimed at Hito while telling Yuki that she'd shoot holes in her man if she resists. But Yuki ignores this warning and rushes towards her. Seeing this, Grace pushes the buttons to shoot the guns, but Yuki throws some knives, which deflect the bullets before they reach Hito, and just when Grace tries to fire another round, she destroys the controller with another blade. With a cold stare, Yuki tells Grace to accept defeat, but Grace points a handgun at Hito, so Yuki kicks it out of her hand and knocks her down with a Bruce Lee kick. While sitting helplessly on the ground, Grace tells Yuki that she'll never be able to live happily with Hito because even if she murders her, countless others will come after her to make a name for themselves. However, Yuki tells her that she won't murder anyone or let anyone die because of her, but instead, she'll use all her power to protect the normal life she obtained with her free will. This shocks Grace to the core because she knows the White Wolf is the strongest assassin who never lets her prey escape, and she laughs about the fact that she just narrowly escaped death. On the way home, Yuki apologizes to Hito for involving him in her assassin wars, and she offers to disappear from his life to keep him safe, but he holds her hand while asking her to teach him how to defend himself so that he'd be able to help her out next time. With a warm smile, Yuki agrees, so Hito cheerfully drags her back home. A few days later, Yuki is playing volleyball with the other girls in class while the boys sit in the corner, glazing her as the Messi of volleyball, and even though Hito agrees that she's amazing, he's still troubled by the Mission Impossible battle that happened the other night. Particularly, all the revelations about Yuki's past as an overpowered assassin have him all shaken up in the head, so he checks ChatGPT for information on the Dragon's 9. However, he's impressed that Yuki is continuing to strive for a normal life, and she stares at him with a warm smile, which makes all the boys freak out in jealousy. Suddenly, the ball is launched at high speed towards Hito, but Grace catches the ball just in time and starts playing around him, making him tremble in fear. A while earlier, Grace met Yuki and Hito in her new blonde disguise and explained that she's now playing the role of the new gym teacher, who is also one of Yuki's elder sisters from Tokyo. Hito argued that the backstory was too complicated, but she explained that she's skilled at disguises because her specialty is espionage. As she teased them, Yuki asked if she had any business with her, so Grace made it clear that she wouldn't try to murder them anymore and offered them a deal where she'd keep her paws away from Hito in exchange for a 1-year supply of Katsuda bread. Hearing this, Yuki agreed and shook hands with her, but Hito was worried that she was playing them. So Yuki explained that he didn't have to worry because in their world, it's forbidden to attack normal people without cause, and she promised to protect him if Grace tries again. Grace added to this by assuring Hito that she'd only be watching them from the sidelines, but in the present, she's cuddling him like a sugar mommy who craves his sausage while telling him that she prefers her old disguise as a nurse since it allowed her to slack off. Hito reminds her of her promise to watch from the sidelines, but she claims that she's doing exactly that by whispering to him, so he complains that she's too close. When she notices that Yuki is jealous, she rubs salt on the wound by waving at her and getting more spicy with her teasing. But this makes Yuki so annoyed that she spikes the ball with so much force that it rips the net and digs into the wall. Hours later, Yuki is having lunch with Hito, who asks her why she suddenly crashed out, so she explains that she feels insecure whenever she sees him with someone from the underworld, even though she knows Grace promised not to harm him. When she asks if it's normal, Hito gets flashbacks of Grace doing OnlyFans poses for him, but he ignores his gooner instincts and tells her that it's normal, so she hugs him. The next morning, Yuki puts on her maid vest and heads to the kitchen, where she boils some water, and afterwards, she goes to the washing machine, where she fawns over a newly washed towel. Once Hito comes downstairs, she rushes to him and cheerfully tells him about how fluffy the towel is, and this makes Hito happy because she's finally succeeded in doing laundry after failing miserably for a whole month, so he praises her. Following this, Yuki handles all the house chores, and afterwards, Hito asks what they could have for dinner since all they have in the fridge is cabbage, so she suggests eating the same meal with sauce that they ate on her first day. Later, at the market, Hito is waiting for their Wingstop chicken to be ready, but Yuki starts drooling over the food joint because it's the birthplace of Katsuda sauce. Hito says he can relate to how she's feeling because he went to see a hero show when he was younger and geeked out even more than her. As the lady merchant updates Hito on their food, Yuki calls his attention to the old chef in the back, who is cutting the chicken with so much skill that she assumes that he's secretly one of the Gotei 13 captains in Bleach. When the lady asks Hito why his girl is acting like an airhead, he explains that she's a huge fan of Katsuda sauce, and she reveals that she's the one who makes the Katsuda sauce, which makes Yuki conclude that she's the Goku of chefs. As Hito glazes her, Yuki thanks her as well and explains that, in the past, all food tasted like horse dung to her, but the Katsuda sauce changed her life by making her experience warmth in food for the first time. With a humble bow, Yuki passionately thanks the old lady once again, and the hag explains that the warmth she's feeling is happiness, and it's what allowed her to truly enjoy the sauce, so Yuki admits that she's right. The lady then gives her a bit of the sauce to try, and once she does, her taste buds ascend to heaven, so she glazes the food in front of Hito. That evening, after dinner, Yuki asks Hito to get some rest while she handles the dishes, so he lies on the couch, where he realizes that Yuki's girly character makes her seem like anything but an assassin. Out of curiosity, he searches the internet for details on the Dragon's 9, but all he sees are stories from Chinese legends, so he considers asking Yuki herself. However, he realizes that she might not want to talk about it because it's a painful past that she wants to cast away, so he decides to wait for her to share her past with him willingly, even though he's dying to know more about her. While sleeping, he has a nightmare of his mom abandoning him again, but everywhere suddenly lights up when he hears Yuki's voice, and when he wakes up, he notices that he's in her arms. She explains that she came to check on him after hearing him groaning and caught him when he fell towards her, but suddenly, Bro's face makes contact with her soft melons, causing him to freak out. After jumping away from her, he explains that he had a nightmare about his mom again, so she offers him a nap on her thighs again, but he declines to stop himself from spilling white sauce all over her. Suddenly, his phone drops on the floor, and Yuki sees that he's researching the Dragon's 9, so he explains that he wants to know more about her, but she reveals that she doesn't know much about the group because she only followed her master's orders and never spoke to any of the members. Yuki then points out that she hasn't fully adapted to the bright world she's currently living in, but whenever she sees Hito's face, she's reminded that she's just a girl trying to be normal. Hito returns the gesture by saying that he, as well, feels at ease whenever he sees her face, and he thanks her for staying with him, but her beauty makes his brain overheat. She then offers to let him use her lap as pillows if he ever had a bad dream, and he tells her about how she appeared in his dream as a hero who saved him from drowning in loneliness. The next morning, Yuki boils some water in the kitchen, does laundry and all the other house chores. Afterwards, she heads to the market to buy some ingredients for dinner, but while the merchant is packing up her veggies, just then, a rugrat calls for Yuki's attention and tells her that she's been admiring her for hours and wants to be just like her. Yuki is pleased to hear this, so she asks Yuki where she got her clothes, and just as Yuki considers directing her to Walmart, the little girl says that normal people don't wear her clothes, which leaves Yuki speechless. Hito then arrives from a convenience store and approaches Yuki, so she asks him if it's normal for people to wear maid outfits. The next Sunday, Hito takes Yuki shopping for clothes, and they surprisingly meet up with Riko, who explains that she chose to make a surprise entrance after hearing about his plans. Yuki then faces the elephant-sized milk factories in the room by asking what Grace is doing there, and she explains that she decided to come after hearing their conversation through a bug she hid in their living room because she knows the Virgin has no idea how to pick girls' clothes. Rico asks Grace if she's also an assassin, and Grace cuddles her tightly while admitting that she is, which makes Rico glaze her nice scent. Following Rico's recommendation, they head into a store nearby, where Yuki tries on an outfit that makes her look like Japanese Cinderella, but Hito complains that it would make people look at her even more. However, Yuki complains that the dress would make it difficult for her to move, but her personal paparazzi, Rico, takes a million pictures of her while claiming that she looks more beautiful than Sydney Sweeney. As Hito argues with Rico, Grace tells them that it's her turn to pick an outfit, and she promises them that she'd pick an adult outfit. However, she ends up making Yuki wear a kinky cop outfit, but Hito complains that they'd get into trouble if she wears that in town, and Yuki points out that she can't hide her knives in such an outfit. Seeing that Grace and Rico are unserious, he asks them to leave him to it, but they insist on taking her to more spots. However, they only make Yuki put on clothes from Angela White's personal collection, and when Hito complains, they ask him what kind of clothes he'd prefer to see her in. So he describes a charming Snow White outfit, which makes Grace tease him. Hours later, they're walking back home after shopping, and Hito tells Yuki that they ended up picking everything she tried instead of picking, so she explains that it was too hard to pick. They soon arrive at a Halloween store, and Rico cheerfully suggests getting a Halloween outfit for Hito in preparation for their Halloween event. The siblings try out some low-quality Dracula outfits, and Grace wears a police cosplay from one of your favorite Brazzers movies, while Yuki dresses up as the Wizard of Oz. While looking around, Hito notices that the store is showing a discount version of The Last of Us, and he informs them that it's his favorite series, so the girls suggest going there. However, Yuki says she's feeling weird about going to the cinema because whenever she did in the past, it was to slime out her targets, and she's never watched movies themselves. Despite this, Hito takes her to see the movie along with the other girls, and they soon get to an intense zombie scene, which makes Yuki tremble in fear. After the movie, Yuki is still in dismay, so Rico asks her why she's cowering when she's powerful enough to destroy all the zombies. But Yuki explains that she can't stand the stench of rotting corpses. While walking back home, Rico starts geeking out over the delicious crepe she got, and when she gives the assassin girl a try, Yuki says it tastes delicious. Seeing this, Grace asks Hito to try her snack as well, but Hito declines because he knows she may have snuck some Viagra inside. As they chat, a pink-haired girl named Naka watches from across the street, looking interested in their fun activities. But her brother grabs her and tells her not to be distracted because it's unbecoming of a Hikage. She then apologizes to him, so he tells her to train her upper body that night and walks away. After parting ways with Grace, Hito tells Yuki that he wants to escort Rico home. As the siblings walk away, Yuki stares at herself in the mirror and looks at the clothes they bought for her. When she returns home, she changes back to her maid outfit and goes to pet Chitaro, only to see that the dumb dog has chewed up the towel. Later that evening, a heavy thunderstorm starts in their area, which makes Hito worry about Yuki. At home, Yuki is feeling depressed that the power has gone out, but lightning suddenly strikes, making her remember the scary zombie movie she watched earlier. While walking through the hallway, Yuki hears a loud sound coming from Chitaro playing around in the kitchen, and as footsteps approach her, she gets so scared that she pulls out her knife. However, it turned out to be Chitaro wrapped up in a towel, and when Hito comes back, she apologizes for accidentally shredding his towel to pieces in fear. Hito notices that he can't mend the towel, but she promises to mend it with everything she has, so he entrusts her with the task and starts petting Chitaro. He then asks if the reason she's wearing her maid outfit is that she doesn't like the clothes they bought, but she explains that even though she loves the clothes, the maid outfit is an important gift from her master and the only link she still has to him after his passing. Her master once told her that she could stop murdering people if she wanted, but back then, she didn't understand his words, so she ended up serving him as an assassin until he passed away. However, now in the present, the maid outfit has allowed her to be with Hito, so she wants to keep wearing it, even though it doesn't look normal, but Hito says it's normal for her to wear things she likes and be scared of zombies, and advises her to do whatever works for her. While playing with Chitaro, Hito notices that the towel it's biting is the same one it was wearing when he found it, which means that it could allow them to find his family. Seeing this, Yuki decides that she'll mend the towel before dinner and explains to Hito that she understands Chitaro's feelings, because her bell originally belonged to her long-lost younger sister, but Hito is shocked that she has a little sister. The next day, Hito is chilling at a ramen spot with Yuki and Grace, but Grace tells him that she doesn't know anything about Yuki's little sister, which annoys him since he's already bribed her with ramen. Despite his complaints, the shameless blondie gobbles up the entire bowl of ramen and starts yapping about how it tastes better than Johnny Sin's cream sauce, but she notices that the airheaded assassin is pouring an entire bottle of katsuda sauce into her ramen, so she scolds her for being an uncultured swine. A while later, Hito and Yuki visit that old merchant lady's store to get a refill on katsuda sauce, but she delivers the bad news that she's run out of it because some students have been buying her entire stock for an upcoming katsuda festival. She apologizes to Yuki for the disappointment and tells her that she'll have to wait for a week before she can buy more of it, and even though Yuki is drowning in agony, she thanks the old hag for always making the delicious sauce. On the way home, Hito complains that it would be tough to make the little katsuda sauce they have left to last for a whole week, but she assures him that she'll cherish every drop. He then asks her what she'd like to talk about when she meets her sister again, but Yuki explains that she can't remember her sister's face or her parents because her memories of the past are vague. But she remembers that her mother gave a bell to her and her sister. Even though she wants to meet her sister again, she's scared of meeting her because she feels that her little sister would have a grudge against her. Hearing this, Hito feels bad for involving Grace in their matter, but Yuki says it's no problem because she'd be fine if she finds out her sister is okay, even if they don't meet. Just then, Hito's friends, Taiga and Kobachi, arrive, and Kobachi starts chewing Hito out for abandoning them to hang out with baddies, but Taiga pulls him back and thanks Yuki for helping Hito have more fun than he used to. This confuses her, so Taiga explains that Hito used to be a rebel in their old school, and he used to put on trashy men in black outfits just to look cool. As if that weren't embarrassing enough, Taiga reveals that Hito doesn't know how to clean because he was a stubborn brat who only used his hands for gooning, but Hito covers his mouth while threatening to cut off his marbles if he says another word. During the commotion, the music album that Taiga is holding leaps out of his hand, but just when it's about to fall into a sewer, Yuki throws her bag to save it. However, her remaining katsuda sauce flies out of her bag and spills on the ground, causing her to freeze in shock. Later that evening, Yuki has a nightmare where a large katsuda bottle, packing 18 inches of meat, cracks her in revenge for spilling his comrade. When she wakes up, Hito comes to check on her, but she starts whining about how there's no point in living anymore since the katsuda sauce hates her now. After she explains the dream, he promises to buy more katsuda sauce for her, but she reveals that it's not the only thing she dreamed of. For the next couple of nights, Yuki has even more nightmares, so she eventually meets Hito to sleep beside her since she can't sleep, but he offers to keep her company with a conversation instead since he's studying that night. As Hito solves his math problems, Yuki points out that he's a kind person who is loved by people time him, and she asks him if he's ever felt hatred towards anyone, so he explains that he's keeping his distance from his dad because of some family drama that happened in the past. Hearing this, Yuki remembers her sister telling her that she hates her, and she decides to head back to her room so she won't distract him any further. In her dreams, the Mandingo Katsuda bottle appears and starts gaslighting her by claiming that Hito doesn't want to be with her anymore because of what she did. He then plays a memory from when she was younger, and back then, she was a prodigy who had superb observation skills and athletic skills. However, she lacked interest in all the abilities and attention because the only thing she paid attention to was the smiles on her parents' faces. During dinner one evening, the doorbell suddenly rang, and her parents went to answer the door, and she tried to stop them, but they walked away and got murdered. This made Yuki so depressed that she cried and blamed herself, and after Yuki got kidnapped, her sister was brought into the whole mess as well. The pain of losing her family made her drop all her emotions, and her fixation shifted from her parents to her sister. However, when her sister saw that Yuki had become a stone-cold murderer, she angrily said she hated her and threw her bell at her. Since she was rejected by her sister, all that was left for Yuki was the life of an assassin, so she locked in and unalived many people until she eventually became the world's strongest assassin. One day, a white-haired man with a voice as smooth as Michael Jackson's found her and took her in as a disciple. Suddenly, Hito wakes Yuki up from the dream and asks if she's okay since he's been hearing her groan in her sleep, but she suddenly grabs him and pulls him to the bed, making him shiver like a complete idiot. However, Yuki asks him to cuddle with her for several more minutes, and he notices that her hands are trembling, so he asks if she had a nightmare. With her voice breaking in agony, She tells him that she had a memory from her distant past, so he comforts her by patting her on the back while explaining to her that it's a technique his mom used on him. The next day, during lunch period, Hito and his friends explain the activities of the Katsuda festival to Yuki, and they mention that the winning class in the competition gets a specially made Katsuda sauce, but this makes her drool like a leaking tap. Kobachi says they have to keep their grades up to stand a chance at winning, so Hito asks Yuki what she scored on the last test, and she cheerfully reveals that she managed to escape failing. However, Hito bursts her bubble by informing her that she doesn't make the cut since she scored 42 when the class average is 60, and this makes her start panicking, so they tell her some Oprah Winfrey quotes to motivate her. Shortly afterwards, Grace informs Yuki that she can't participate in the festival because she failed the gym test by forgetting to write her name on the answer sheet. However, Yuki zooms around her faster than A-Train and writes her name in the blink of an eye, forcing Grace to give her a pass. After Grace leaves, Yuki spits Naka hiding while talking about her plans to serve Hito, and when they approach her, she tells them that she knows a way they can win the festival. At home, Naka moves like Zoro while fighting some mechanical training dummies with kendo sticks, but they eventually overpower her, so her brother, Tatsu, saves her and reminds her that they have to carry on the legacy of their martial arts bloodline, so she promises to do her best. As Tatsu walks away, Naka feels sad that she disappointed her brother again, but Bro is relieved that Jake's cute face wasn't harmed. On the day of the festival, the MC announces that the class competition will consist of a game of cops and robbers, which begins at 2 in the afternoon. In the student council room, the vice president asks the president, Tatsu, if he'll be okay since he'll be the only cop in the game of cops and robbers, but he assures her that he'll be fine. He then brings up Yuki, so the vice president, Mira, explains that much of her backstory is unknown, even though she's currently pegged as Hito's cousin, and this makes him worried because she's in the same class as his beloved Naka. Since he suspects that she could be an enemy of the council, Tatsu decides to investigate her himself during his patrol before leaving the room. Meanwhile, Hito's class is hosting a mascot cafe, and Naka packs up some cookies for Tatsu while explaining to Hito that her brother is perfect and productive, unlike her, who is small and weak, and the reason she wants to win is to show him that she can accomplish something so he can finally acknowledge her. Hito notices that Naka is acting shy around Yuki, but he thanks her for giving them the information they need to win the competition. Suddenly, a person cosplaying the Katsuda bottle arrives, and Yuki falls in love at first sight, until Taiga takes off the mask to reveal his chopped face. Hito asks Naka why he hasn't seen her at any gym class, so she explains that she doesn't want to stand out and tells them that she's good at running, even though not as fast as her brother. Yuki promises to do her best as well, so they can take down the student council, and Naka admits that she'll never defeat her brother if she gives up before trying. Meanwhile, one of their maids approaches Tatsu at the cafe, but he scares her off with his aura because he's ticked off that they're making his glorious queen, Naka, speak lowly maid language, and he swears that he'll never forgive Yuki. Shortly afterwards, Hito and the others meet in the hallway, and Tatsu starts bragging about how he'll become the #1 mascot on television, but Hito realizes that Yuki may not be comfortable with being aired on television. Before he can ask her, Riko suddenly arrives and starts scolding them for slacking off, so Hito explains that Yuki has an upcoming competition. As they goof off together, Naka confesses to Yuki that she doesn't have friends and shyly asks her to be friends, and Yuki agrees to be friends with her, so she starts fawning over the Barbenheimer memes people will make with their selfies. Hito then asks them to join the others in walking around the festival, but Naka explains that she has something to handle before running away. When Hito asks what's going on, Yuki confuses him even more by asking what it means to be friends. Meanwhile, Naka runs through the hallway, bursting with excitement over her new friendship with the Goth Queen, and she decides that she'll take an extra step to make sure they win the competition. After jumping to the ground, she listens in on the conversation in the student council room, and she's alarmed by what she hears. Soon, the competition begins, and the MC introduces a gorgeous baddie named Nazca as her guest, causing everyone in the crowd to cheer joyfully. The rules of the game are simple. If President Tatsu captures all the robbers and throws them in prison, the cops win, but if even one robber gets away, the robbers win. The MC also explains that a robber can escape from prison if they're touched by a robber from the same class, and Nazca announces a new rule, which states that all contestants must wear whatever they wore for their class store for the event. Hearing this, Naka apologizes to her team for not getting the information on time, but Yuki tells her that she doesn't have anything to be sorry for because Hito told her that a friend is someone who lends a hand when their pal is in trouble. She then remembers Hito telling her to put on a wolf costume while explaining that it's best she hides her face to prevent other assassins from seeing her on television and attacking her. However, after putting on the costume, she claims that it would work to her advantage. Mr. Sister Complex sees Naka looking cute in her hunt costume and starts to drool over her in his mind, but his face looks scary, so she looks away, but this makes him angry because he thinks she's abandoned him for Yuki. Suddenly, Mina and her twin sister walk towards Tatsu, and the MC asks what they're doing since he's the cop, so Mina reminds her that it's not against the rules to get caught on purpose and declares that she'll be supporting Tatsu from prison. Once the competition begins, Tatsu zooms around the battlefield like a psycho version of the Reverse Flash and packs up all the robbers on the battlefield until the only ones left are Tai Jiajie and the girls. Tai Jiajie tries to make a stand by quoting one of Eren Yeager's speeches, but Tatsu sends the moron flying before challenging Yuki. Naka advises Yuki to run away with her, but Yuki refuses, and when Tatsu grabs her, she fights back with mid-air kung fu. Seeing that her friend is struggling, Naka aids her by activating a smokescreen ability, which allows her to switch positions with Yuki. Tatsu ends up eliminating her by accident, and Yuki remembers a speech Hito told her earlier about how he wants to repay his friends for helping him during his hard times. After Mina secures Naka, it becomes a one-on-one battle between Tatsu and Yuki, and the crowd hypes up the match as a bigger showdown than Mike Tyson versus Floyd Mayweather. As the two Gigachads lock fists, Yuki starts brainstorming about what to have for dinner, but Tatsu starts scolding her for trying to be friends with her without knowing anything about her. However, Yuki remembers Hito's words from earlier, and this gives her the motivation she needs to slam him on the ground before charging towards the prison. On arriving there, she holds Naka's hand and goes on her knees while asking to be friends with her, and this makes Naka so stunned that her face turns into chili. Suddenly, Tatsu appears behind them, but just as he places his hand on them, the MC announces that the game is over, and Hito realizes that his class just lost because both girls are in prison. Some television interviewers start rushing towards them for an interview, and Naka notices that Yuki is trying to hide her identity, so she releases another smoke screen, which allows them to escape. Later that evening, Yuki is talking to Naka about their new friendship, but Tatsu suddenly arrives and calls Naka to follow him before challenging Yuki to a future battle. Days later, Naka showcases her skills at throwing shuriken to Yuki and Hito, and they clap for her, but she apologizes while telling them that she usually doesn't show her abilities to anyone outside their family. Hito claims she's already a better ninja than Sasuke, but Naka says nowhere near as talented as her brother and confesses that she'd rather not have her abilities because she wishes to have a normal life. Hearing this, Yuki admits that she feels the same way because she also wonders about what it means to be normal, and explains that her heart would be more at ease if she talked to her about the subject. Naka agrees, so Yuki tells her that she's a weapons specialist as well, and Naka asks her for a demonstration. Hito is enjoying the sight of the two baddies bonding, but Grace suddenly arrives behind him and accuses him of trying to start a harem. While toying with Hito, Grace tries to make him eat her melons, but his goth mommy, Yuki, saves him by throwing a knife in their direction, so Grace yells at Yuki, reminding her that she sent her to look for her sister. However, Yuki ignores her and apologizes to Hito before going after her knife. Grace identifies Naka as the youngest of the Hikage clan, but this shocks her, so she explains that she's an informant and starts pestering her until Yuki returns with a blade. Once they've settled, Hito asks Grace what she's doing there, so she reveals that she's leaving for China to get information about Yuki's sister, but she'll ask some of her old associates because asking the organization directly would be too risky. She then wishes them luck in the Christmas season and walks away. Naka then asks if Yuki and Hito are dating, but Hito explains that nothing is going on between them, so she apologizes and explains that she thought they were a couple since they always hang out together. However, Hito notices that Yuki is strangely quiet, so she explains that she was thinking about how she's never had anyone interested in her, and she was fine with living alone, but now, she's happy because she has people in her life worth protecting. This makes Hito happy, and he realizes that what she feels is close to familial love, but he suddenly gets a text from his dad, revealing that the deadbeat will be back in Japan for the new year. Several days later, Hito and the others see that snow has filled the yard, so Hito makes a snowman, and Yuki tries to make one as well, but ends up making a special grade cursed spirit instead. Hito comforts her by saying her snowman looks as cute as hers, but Chitaro ruins the romantic mood by destroying the snowman, and Hito suddenly gets a call, which makes him feel angry. After ending the call, he asks Yuki to watch over the house while he goes over to meet Riko, but Yuki suddenly calls him back and asks him to meet her somewhere on the way home. Much later, Hito is running through the street, wondering why Yuki asked him out, and he sees a crowd gathered nearby, so he moves in to investigate, only to see Yuki wearing a dazzling city girl outfit. When he asks why she's dressed that way, she covers him in a scarf and explains that she brought it to keep him warm. She then gives him the shock of his life by asking to go on a date with him, and when he asks why, she explains that Riko put her up to it because Hito has some concerns weighing on his mind. With a warm smile, she tells him that she wants to bring him comfort just like he did her when she made a monstrous snowman, and this makes his cheeks glow red, so he finally agrees to go on the date with her. While walking through town together, Hito tries to understand what he truly feels fits her since he mostly sees her as a rugrat in an adult's body, and when she asks where they could go, he suggests having dinner. Once it starts snowing, Hito shows Yuki some Christmas lights around town, which glow more brightly as they make contact with snow, and he claims that they're one of the reasons he loves snow. However, Yuki laughs while telling him that it was heartwarming to hear him say he loves her, and she admits that he was only referring to her namesake, but Hito's entire face is about to explode from embarrassment. The next day, Riko gives Yuki some fashion advice and explains that the clothes she just recommended would make Hito fall head over heels for her, so Yuki promises to do her best to look more beautiful. A while later, Hito meets with Riko, who tells him that Yuki loves him because she wants to be with him at all times, and she then recommends an online love test to confirm if they love each other. As she asks him the questions, Yuki replies yes to all of them, and they eventually get to the last question, which asks if Yuki ever told Hito that she likes him outside of a love confession. Hearing this, Hito remembers her words during their date, and he lies that she hasn't, but Riko reveals that the test results place them at a 96% chance of having feelings together, which shocks Hito completely. Just then, Yuki arrives and starts pulling out the items she bought from the convenience store, but Riko starts asking her questions from the love game. She replies yes to every single question, making Hito lose his mind, and they eventually get to the last question, which she says yes to while bringing up how he told her he likes snow. After the game, Riko celebrates the fact that they have a 196% chance of having feelings for each other, but Hito yells at her for trying to blow things out of proportion. During dinner, they enjoy the warmth of the kotatsu, and Riko mentions how Hito used to mess up their house to spite their dad, but Hito tells her to shut up because he doesn't want Yuki to find out about his pathetic past. As Riko continues to troll him, Hito tries to kick her from beneath the kotatsu, but he notices that she isn't reacting, so he looks underneath and finds out that he's been kicking Yuki all this time. Both of them get flustered, and Riko makes matters worse by accusing them of secretly playing with each other's private instruments. Several years ago, Hito confessed his feelings to a girl he used to hang out with all the time, but she rejected him coldly, saying that what he felt for her wasn't love, but rather the need to be with someone. Hito knew she was right because he'd been desperately lonely, and the only reason he confessed to her was that talking to her cured his loneliness. After that, they never hung out again, and he assumed that his confession hurt her, but he was pained as well because her response hit him harder than a regular rejection would have. In the present, Hito wonders if what he feels for Yuki is real love or the same half-baked affection he had for his old friend. The next morning, Hito wakes up to the sight of Yuki sleeping beside him, and he tries to sneak out of the room, but she wakes up and greets him. Outside the room, Hito starts freaking out, and he realizes that it's his fault because he's the one who told Yuki to sleep on his bed to cure her nightmares. Out of embarrassment, Bro starts jamming his head on the door to awaken dormant brain cells, and he's troubled by the fact that they have to spend so much time together because of the winter break, but she suddenly approaches him and asks what the problem is. Hito lies that he just wants to get an early start on their end-of-year cleaning, but he realizes that it's a terrible excuse, so he heads downstairs and washes his face. There, he wonders why he's acting strangely, but he decides to stop it for his sake as well as Yuki's, because he knows that nothing would happen if he confesses his feelings to her. Meanwhile, Yuki is aura farming with her eyes closed while mopping the house, and she feels proud of herself for learning how to do it properly, unlike the first day at their house when she fumbled horribly. However, when Hito walks downstairs, he sees her in the same miserable state she was in that first day, so he scolds Chitaro for troubling her and suggests that she take a bath. As she takes off her jacket, Hito freezes in shock at the sight of his queen in a wet see-through shirt, and he runs away to the bath to prevent his volcano from erupting all over her. While hiding in the bathroom, Hito realizes that she's just as innocent as the first day they met, and since she cares for them like family, he fears that he's about to ruin all that again. When he remembers how his last love confession went down, he starts panicking because he doesn't want Yuki to leave him the same way. But Yuki suddenly knocks and asks if he's gotten sick. He meets her in the other room, and she invites him to rest on her lap, but bro knows that his eggplant wouldn't be able to handle her current saucy state, so he tells her that it's pushy for girls to ask guys to rest on their laps. This makes Yuki feel bad as she assumes that he's fed up with her, and he tries to explain himself, but tears start spilling from her eyes as she admits that she can't do anything right. Seeing this, Hito explains that it's not what he meant, and he racks his miniature brain to figure out how to cheer her up, but all he can come up with is telling her to go to the bath. Once he tells her, she humbly walks into the bathroom, and that's when the idiot realizes that he just made the worst choice, as it would make things even more awkward between them. Following this, Yuki starts crying whenever anything at all happens around her while apologizing for being a culture, and Hito decides to cheer her up by letting her sleep beside him, but he can't fall asleep at all due to her cuteness. The next morning, Yuki heads to the living room to find Hito, but sees a note, where he assures her that he'll be back in a short time. Minutes later, Yuki goes on a walk with Chitaro, but sees that all her favorite shops in town have closed down for the end of the year. She soon finds some stores that are open, so she buys some groceries and returns home, but Hito informs her that he's already made roast beef for dinner, and this makes her cry. During dinner, Yuki tries the food, and it's so good that she starts crying again, so Hito feels bad that he ended up making her cry again. That night, Hito sleeps off on the couch, and Yuki tucks him in but notices that his phone is ringing. The next morning, Riko arrives at their place and wishes them a happy new year while cheerfully inviting them to a shrine visit. However, Yuki informs her that Hito is still dozing on the couch, but Riko reveals that January 1st is actually his birthday, and they usually meet with the family to celebrate after the yearly shrine visit. Hearing this, Yuki starts crying again, and she explains to Riko that she's been crying more often than Deku recently, so Riko decides to go to the shrine alone. After she leaves, Yuki gets a text from Naka, inviting her to visit the shrine with her, so she meets her there, but tells her that she doesn't know the place since it's her first time. While walking around, they find a box of fortune slips, and AKA explains to Yuki that it gives fortune for the new year, so she decides to give it a try. As Yuki picks up a slip, Naka feels glad that she's able to help someone out like a real friend, but she sees Yuki spilling her tears, which makes her freak out. Once they've calmed down, Yuki sobs even more while telling her that it's only a matter of time before Hito abandons her because he's been acting differently lately, and the thought of losing him makes her eyes become a waterfall. Hearing this, Naka tells Yuki that she, as well, was spilling tears uncontrollably at some point, but at that time, remembered her mom telling her that it's alright to let out her tears because it's an expression of all the sad feelings she's bottled up for years. Naka then advises her to cry as much as she wants until she eventually gets her smile back, and afterwards, they say a prayer together. Yuki wishes to be able to stay with Hito and the others that year and forever. At home, Hito is still dozing off while his dad calls him repeatedly. On the way home, Yuki tells Naka that it's Hito's birthday, and Naka suggests that she get him a birthday present while they watch the night sky together, but Yuki says she doesn't know what present to get him. When Naka asks what he likes, Yuki brings up the fried chicken with special sauce, but Naka says it won't work as a gift, so Yuki remembers that he likes trashy anime figurines. They soon arrive at the toy store, and Yuki tells Maki that her man has a collection of heroes on the shelf, so Naka asks what kind of heroes he likes. Suddenly, Yuki spots one of the figures in Hito's collection in a machine, and as she stares at it, Naka explains that it's a capsule game where one could get a random toy in the picture for 300 yen per attempt. Yuki says she wants the black one, and Naka reminds her that she has to try over and over again before she can get it, but Yuki still insists on going through with it. After several rounds, Yuki is frustrated because she's only won a bunch of low-quality Pokemon toys which she doesn't need, and she starts crying while admitting that she can't even get Hito a present. However, Hito's dad hears her whining, so he offers to teach her a magic spell for when she wants something badly. Yuki is shocked, thinking that he's about to use a Doctor Strange spell, but the deadbeat ends up saying a rip-off of Erwin Smith's speech to motivate her. With these words in mind, Yuki tries again with fire in her eyes, and this time, she manages to win the toy she wants, so she thanks him for his help, but he says it's okay because he couldn't stand by and watch her struggle. As he walks away, Naka points out that he's a very kind and handsome man, and Yuki agrees that he's considerate. At home, Riko wakes her dumb brother up with karate chops and informs him that their dad will soon arrive. He realizes that Yuki isn't at home, and he starts panicking because he hasn't talked to her about their dad yet, so Riko scolds him for not telling her about him, even though they live in the same house. However, Hito explains that he can't just talk to her about anything just because they live closely, and he realizes that it was the same issue that happened with his mom because he couldn't ask her why she suddenly had to leave. He also couldn't ask his dad why he looked the way he did when she left, let alone tell him that it was the first time he actually felt afraid of him. Shortly after his mom left, Hito's dad got transferred from work and barely came back home, leaving a nanny to care for him instead. Hito still can't bring himself to ask his dad why he's living separately from his mom, because the anger he saw in his dad's eyes that day made him fear that he was the cause of the separation. Because of this, he's afraid of how his dad will react to Yuki, but he suddenly gets a text from Naka, asking him to cheer Yuki up when she comes home. Just then, Yuki returns, and Riko freaks out when she sees that Yuki's eyes are swollen from crying. As Yuki tries to go inside, Hito informs her that his dad is on the way, and he hasn't told him that she's an assassin or that she wears a maid outfit. However, when he sees her face, he tells her not to worry about it, and after she leaves, he tells Riko that he'll protect Yuki no matter what his dad says, causing her to make fun of him. As they bicker, their dad suddenly enters the room, and Riko cheerfully hugs him while catching up to him, but Yuki interrupts their playtime by bringing up the new maid he hired. His dad, Itsuki, admits that the house is clean thanks to her efforts, but Hito drops the bombshell, informing him that she isn't a housekeeper but a bona fide maid who was an assassin in the past. Hearing this, Itsuki connects the dots, and once Yuki enters the room, he calls her by her assassin name, Shuue. At the table, Yuki thanks Itsuki for helping her out earlier, and he asks her when she started working for her master, Hamuro, so she explains that he took her in 3 years ago. Itsuki explains that Hamuro told him about an assassin who became a maid, and he claims that Hamuro was a brilliant man before his death, but Hito is stunned as their conversation makes him realize that they both have sides that he doesn't know. Riko asks Itsuki if he knew Yuki was an assassin all along, so he explains that Hamuro told him long before his passing, even though he didn't believe it. Itsuki then starts joking around with Riko, but Hito isn't surprised because his dad usually switches to jokes whenever he wants to avoid something or keep a secret. However, when he remembers the text from Naka, he realizes that he's just as bad because all this time he's kept things to himself, and instead of learning about Yuki and Itsuki, he just waited for them to tell him. Itsuki then announces that it's time for him to leave because he has to talk to their mom about some things, and he wishes Hito a happy birthday before handing him a gift which he and his mom got him. As he leaves, Hito chases him to the car and asks him if Yuki can stay there. Itsuki asks him what he wants, and Hito says he wants her to stay there, so Itsuki permits him to keep her at home and promises to discuss the matter with his mom. After he leaves, Hito feels proud that he was finally able to speak his mind to his dad for the first time, but Itsuki suddenly calls and asks him to give Yuki the phone. After confirming that she's okay with the situation, he thanks her for being the reason Hito is finally changing and asks her to keep watching over him before ending the call. Overwhelmed with emotions, Yuki carries Hito and jumps like a Super Mario brother to the roof to view the sunset. There, she hands him his present, but she starts crying because the toy has shattered into pieces, so Hito tells her the story of how his dad used to be his hero, until the day his mom left, when he started to fear him. He then asks Yuki to be part of his family, and she gets teary-eyed, but this time, she tells him that it's tears of joy before agreeing to be part of his family. When Yuki asks if it's possible for someone like her, he responds that it has to be her because he loves her, and Yuki smiles while telling him that she loves him as well. Later that night, Hito returns to his room, and since he knows that Yuki's love is platonic, he cries because it's the first time he's ever truly experienced heartbreak. However, Yuki remembers his love confession while cutting some cabbage, and her heart starts pounding at high speed, making her realize that she truly loves him. That's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed and watch this video on screen.